I finally picked up my block yesterday at the machine shop. So right now I have a rear-mounted short block or small block Chevy mounted on a 2015 Jeep. That's what the guy told me I should tell you. Had this done at Medina Mountain Motors, which ironically is not in Medina, Ohio, it's in Creston, Ohio. But at any rate, they put it on the rack in the back of the Jeep, and I'm going to now lift that off and try and get it on the motor's engine stand. So what they did is they thermal cleaned the block, Magnaflexed the block for cracks, bored and honed the blocks 30 over, installed the new cam bearings, installed new freeze plugs and oil gallery plugs, cleaned and turned the crankshaft 10 under, both the rods and the mains, and installed new ARP rod bolts and resized rods. Not quite sure what that resized rod means. They removed and replaced press fit pistons. I had aluminum in here and they put hypertetic in. I'm not sure if I said that right, but okay. And here's the reason I had them do all the work. They installed the cam button and adjusted the end play for a hydraulic roller camshaft. Okay, that's something that you don't need on a flat tappet camshaft, but on a hydraulic, if you don't have it, you have a tendency for the cam to walk back and forth in and out. So that's not good. And then since that was the one thing I couldn't do, because in order to install that cam button, you have to measure the end play, and then you have to machine the cam button to fit. I don't have a lathe. That's a thing where it's not worth trying to buy the tool and try to gain the experience you need in order to do that. So once it became clear to me that they were going to have to install the timing chain in order to do that, and the timing cover, because the cam button fits between the timing chain cover and the camshaft, it became clear to me that while they were doing all that, instead of having to remove that and put it back on, I just had them install or assemble the short block, which wants to pushing the pistons into the cylinders and bolting them up to the crankshaft, and bolting the crankshaft in. And then they put in the oil pump, which he didn't list there, and I got a high volume, high pressure oil pump. Came with the engine kit that they recommended to put in it, with them knowing the camshaft I had, the heads I was putting on. And so they installed that and put on the oil pan, and that's about it as far as assembling the short block. So what I've done, they placed this on this rack with they had an engine leveler, which I have here, but theirs was longer, so it fit better. They used one of the holes where the flex plate bolts to the flywheel, and they used the crankshaft pulley hole. I'm hoping that this raises pretty much level with where I've got it set. They put it in upside down so that they wouldn't scratch the oil pan. I got an aluminum oil pan, which I provided to them from Summit Racing, and I have on the timing chain cover, I also got an aluminum timing chain cover from Summit Racing. So this is upside down, so I'm going to install it onto the engine stand upside down. I'm going to figure out here what's going to be easier to do. Move the engine to the stand or move the stand to the engine. It's probably going to be the latter, but I've got to give myself enough room to work. This is the end over here. It's going to get bolted to the engine stand. So let's see what way we got to line it up. It's been a problem for me every time I've used this engine stand to try and get the legs from the hoist underneath the engine stand, because if you've seen my video where I put the engine on the stand originally, you know that I put legs on the end of the engine stand because being a three-wheel engine stand, it tends to tip as you're trying to rotate the engine. So I put those extra legs on, which now because I put them on, I have to loosen them so that I can get the legs of the hoist under the engine stand. And then once I get the legs or the engine bolted to the stand, I'll put those legs back down before I even try to move it even a little bit. I bought this engine stand off of a neighbor who was moving out of state, and it was a good buy, but I wished it had legs that would prevent it from tipping without that. Now I don't know if I had gotten the legs that would prevent it from tipping, whether or not I'd be able to fit that in between the engine's hoist. So that's the one thing that is a little bit of a question mark. So I'm going to have to raise this up before I can get a couple bolts in. In the meantime, I'm going to check to make sure that I'm focusing in on the job at hand. I left the bolts in the engine stand, so I know when I took it to the machine shop, so that I know I've got ones that fit. Just a matter of lining the arms up and then tightening it down. Let's see how that goes. this in cellophane. I'm not going to put the flex plate on till I take this off the stand to mount it into the chassis, because when I had it on there before, it was in the way. So let's see where these line up good. Three lined up. So that was pretty easy to get those lined up. Sense bolts in there. That's not the right socket. And I can see by the fact that I've got two empty socket places on the rail that I put it somewhere. Where I attach these okay, I'm gonna have to get this further in it, walk that. I don't know whether I need to go up or down, but it is not. Lined up properly. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to squirt some oil in there so it's easier to turn before I try and align it. I didn't do that before when I pulled the engine. So it was a bit difficult to turn. So those are in. Now I'm going to tighten up the bolts that hold the rods that hold the bolt to the bell housing holes on the block. Let's see if I can guess. Those, by the way, were 9/16. I guess if you have your own engine stand, well, it depends on the engine you have, what the bell housing bolts are tacked for. Chevy small block is, I don't know the size of the bolt, but it's got a 9/16 head. Okay, so that's bolted to the engine stand, but before I unbolt it from the hoist, I am going to put some oil in there where it rotates. And then I need a 5/8 inch bolt to tighten it down so it doesn't spin on its own. We'll have to find some oil. Okay, I just put some oil on there, and then I was able to twist and pull on it, and it came back in. I'm going to tighten down the holding nut. And I can lower the hoist just a little bit so I can remove the bolts I have here that are holding the leveler on. On this side, when they lifted it at the shop, they put one bolt in one of the flex plate bolt holes on the end of the crankshaft, and they put the other on the crankshaft where the harmonic damper goes. What I did is I found bolts that fit the starter, because I wanted it a little bit sideways, if you will, or cocked, so that it might be easier to get to the engine hoist. And then I used, let's see, this would be the right size, probably a power steering mounting hole on the front end of the engine. So that's that. She's on the stand, and as I said before I move this thing, I'm going to put those two legs back down so that if it would start to tip, it can only go so far. Now, I'm going to leave this upside down for now. Reason being, I can put motor mounts on it. I can put my connection for the oil filter on it. Might even put the starter on. I haven't decided that yet. But those are things I'll consider putting on while it's upside down before I turn it. Other than that, for today, all I'm going to do is move it over to the side of the shop here, so that I didn't get much of that in the video. I'm going to move it over to the side of the shop out of the way because I was on vacation last week and I had to I have to cut the grass. It's getting kind of long. But shortly I will begin the process of adding the things to the block. Heads, just push rod length. Then I have to go get push rods. And I'm just verifying what I think I already know, because the gentleman at the Dynamic Motors told me that since I didn't really, I didn't mill the heads or anything like that, because they didn't need it, they were perfectly fine. Lovely. So he said I should be able to just buy the specified push rods, and I had already purchased a push rod length checker. So one of the things I'll do is use it and just verify the length. It's supposed to be 7.3 inches. And there will be a video there on how to use a push rod length checker. So stay tuned.